Shalom, first and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, double honors to elders and apostles, great millstone who teaches the truth and sincerity, and a shout out to Yakim that's out there on four corners of the earth proclaim this truth. Barakah Yahweh, Barakah Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Barakah. So, this is going to be a longer video than what you're probably used to me doing, but, you know, I do like to do a lot of re-uploads because sometimes you just can't break everything down in 15 minutes and just, you know, the videos say a lot, but there's a lot more on this Rex 84 thing. If you're not familiar with Rex 84, there's more about what's going on now, and we know now that, well, Last American Vagabond is now reporting that they don't just plan on Nicaragua and Venezuela, but now also starting movement on Cuba, which is one of the countries that the United States always wanted to take. But, you know, here's a little bit on Syria. We'll start out with Syria, and we'll just go from here.
A contingent of U.S. troops will remain deployed in Syria, even after the troops' withdrawal declared by President Donald Trump. On February 21st, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders announced that a small peacekeeping group of about 200 troops will remain in Syria for some period of time. By February 22nd, it had appeared, according to U.S. officials quoted by mainstream media, that Sanders had underestimated the number of troops remaining. According to these reports, 200 troops will remain in northeastern Syria and 200 others will remain in the Al Tanf base on the Syrian-Iraqi border. By February 23rd, the story had developed further, with Pentagon officials declaring that the remaining U.S. troops will be a part of the multinational force consisting of primarily NATO member states. While Pentagon spokesman Commander Sean Robertson provided no manpower estimations for this force, media reports relying on U.S. defense officials suggested that the U.S. allies will keep from 800 to 1,500 troops. Therefore, between 1,000 and 1,700 troops, 200 to 400 of whom will be U.S. personnel, will remain deployed in a war-torn country, alongside with an unknown number of private military contractors. Compared to the current 2,000 to 3,000 U.S. troops operating in Syria, this is a notable decrease. However, this is far from any kind of rapid and full troop withdrawal announced by the U.S. President in December of 2018. In fact, Washington is reshaping its contingent to pursue its own political and military task in the post-ISIS Syria. The US-led coalition will also keep most of its infrastructure established in Syria, including the Al Tanf base on the Damascus-Baghdad highway. This will allow the Trump administration to achieve the following goals: to limit the growth of influence of the Damascus government, Iran and Russia in northeastern Syria, to keep their own proxies, the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces, under control and prevent any significant progress in the negotiation between Damascus and the SDF in the short term. In some cases, this may lead to the creation of the quasi-state on the eastern bank of the Euphrates. This entity will in fact be controlled from Washington, to keep a direct action tool to influence the situation on the ground. This should strengthen the US negotiation positions in its ongoing bargain over the northeastern Syria safe zone with Turkey. To continue projecting power in Syria, assisting Israel in its operations against Iran and Iranian-backed forces. Meanwhile, Washington also continued its diplomatic campaign against Iran. During the Warsaw Conference held on February 13 to 14th, the US, Israel and Saudi Arabia once again attempted to establish a multinational anti-Iranian coalition to crack down on the growing regional power. This effort failed mostly because of a neutral stance of EU states. However, this does not mean that the conflict between the Iran-Hezbollah bloc and the US-Israeli-Saudi alliance has any real chances to be de-escalated.
And that's just it. They're not going to de-escalate. They're going to escalate everything, as this devil always does. So, while the whore is saying that they're not going to leave Syria, Vladimir Putin has now come out with a list of potential nuclear targets here in America, which we know is biblical prophecy of Babylon the Great being destroyed in 1 hour. So let's play this.
Vladimir Putin firing off with more warnings to the West, and then Russian state television coming out with this list of U.S. military facilities that Moscow will target in the event of a nuclear strike. He is boasting once again about these hypersonic missiles, saying that Russia has been developing them and that they could hit these targets in less than 5 minutes. He says that the Moscow military is ready for a Cuban missile style type of crisis. So however this breaks loose, he's saying that they're prepared, and of course, he's allied up with China there to their side. He has listed these facilities on TV, and they are as follows. The targets include the Pentagon, the presidential retreat in Camp David, Maryland. So they would target that too. They let it be known. The report, unusual even by sometimes bellicose standards of the Russian state TV, was broadcast on Sunday evening, days after Putin had said that the military was ready for this Cuban missile-style type of crisis, if the United States wanted one. For them to go out and start stating this stuff is interesting. And I'm going to look here, see if I missed one. I don't see any other key location that they target that they say in here. Now, they might have shown the Russian people all these different towns and cities in an infographic or something, but they're not showing them here. All they're saying is that they targeted the places that I mentioned, that they might deploy these in these regions. So, the Pentagon and Camp David, two places pointed out here that I guess you could expect to see Russia strike if they ever did make a move. But I wanted to point it out because whenever certain targets and places are called out, it's wise to pay attention. I'll update if we see or hear of any more, and I'll leave a link below. Make sure to follow me on Twitter. It's been Dabu7.
And he's got one more video here, which I'm going to play that as well. Like I said, this is going to be a little bit longer than my general 15-minute videos. There's just so much going on right now in preparedness of World War III. Okay, here's another Dabu7 video, and this is about the troops being in Puerto Rico, an army in Colombia as well.
We have the Russian Security Council stating that the United States is about to make big moves in terms of Venezuela. And of course, we know that Russia has mercenaries on the ground in Venezuela as well, along with Chinese troops that are down there and pockets of others as well. But they're saying that we are amassing troops in Puerto Rico, in Colombia, and as I've stated before, it's pretty obvious there's some guys on the ground in the jungles all around this country. There has been, and just this past week, the whole shipment of aid that was brought down and up to the border between Colombia and Venezuela, that ended up going up in flames. There was a lot of chaos, and we still have this ongoing tug-of-war, the struggle for power, so to speak, and a lot of propaganda going back and forth from different sides, obviously wanting to stir support, their way. In this situation, let's take a look at the map here real quick. Because if they're saying they're sending these units into Puerto Rico and Colombia, we also know Maduro made moves here to clamp down the border with Brazil, which would be all through here, is where they clamped down. And then up through here, they had clamped down heavily in terms of the border with Colombia. And then they tried to come through with these shipments to get through here, and of course they've got this whole thing locked down. Many of the bridges, even one of the newest ones that was built in 2016 that spans the river between Colombia and Venezuela, or one of the areas there that separates the border, it's never been opened. It's actually the one that they dropped off materials at the first time that sat there. It's never been opened, so no one has ever driven across that to begin with. But when looking at this map, you can get kind of an idea of what's going on. Now, Pompeo just came out and put threats toward Cuba and Nicaragua and said that you're going to get it too if you want to back them, because you're running your mouths, is basically what he said, and put them in the crosshairs. So they did this with Venezuela throughout the past year. Now that they're making moves on Venezuela and the whole world knows it, he's basically said Cuba and Nicaragua are in our sights now. This is all going down in our backyard. Mexico not being on our side in all this. So who is down through there? Guatemala? Honduras? Because you've got them on the other side of the fence, these guys on the other side of the fence, these guys on the other side of the fence. The Bolivian president was making statements in regards to all this. You can see where Bolivia is right here. And Brazil's president. So it's, in my opinion, that there's definitely guerrillas in the jungles, mercenaries on the ground, all around this place, and this is just more talk of them gearing up for it. We're going to leave a link. Make sure to follow me on Twitter.
So, I'm going to bring this scripture up because you know how Yahushua put it, but I like to bring that out to the best of my abilities. Matthew chapter 24 and verse 4. Yahushua answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying that I am the power, and shall deceive many. Meaning that they claim to have the truth, but they do not have the truth. You know, because that's what, this devil puts the word Christ there, but pretty much we know that that's not even a name, but yet they're going to proclaim that they have the word. And you know that this word of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai differs with everything that we've been taught. So there's going to be many that are going to claim to have the truth and shall deceive many. Christianity is just an example of that. You know, but you got many within Israel that are deceiving many, you know, telling people that's okay, that sodomy is okay as long as it's with the woman. Or that, the mark of the beast is an embargo. You know who I'm talking about. And you shall hear wars and rumors of wars. Is that not what's happening now? See ye not be troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. You know, and we're seeing this. For nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. We're seeing Esau coming against himself with Vladimir Putin stepping in on everything. And there shall be famines, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places. All these the beginning of sorrows. And that's another thing is that you're seeing that, pestilence and earthquakes, and you got famines everywhere, because the whole thing that happened with Venezuela was famine caused, And in fact, Roger Waters has something to say about it, so I think I'll bring that out. And this is the other big part. They shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. We are hated by all nations, especially those of us in Great Millstone, and those that are joined to Great Millstone. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. Again, happening right now. Let's take a look at what Roger had to say, because this is interesting. Roger Waters of the Pink Floyd.
States did was they first Obama declared that Venezuela was a strategic threat to the United States, and they imposed economic sanctions and a blockade through
just like they did with Libya.
Country. 16 years later, those illegal and draconian sanctions have borne the fruit that the US required them to bear. They wanted to foment dissent in the country by destroying the economy and by encouraging inflation. And they have achieved that end. There is dissent, without question, in Venezuela. People are leaving Venezuela. Life is hard in Venezuela, particularly for poor people. It's mainly because of the inflation. It's a lie that there's no food. That's just wrong. There is. There's tons of food, but it's too expensive for people to buy. So,
and that's what they plan to do here. In Babylon the Great, they plan to make everything so expensive that you can't afford it. I mean, for right now, it's not that bad, but they are going to do that, It's just a matter of time before that hits over here.
They're having another go at a coup right now.
And that's what this devil does. So America wants to try to play that hero bullshit, but you know that they're no hero. They're the terrorists themselves, just like they've been doing with Syria.
The Security Council has warned that the US is getting ready to intervene in Venezuela and topple embattled President Nicolas Maduro. Up to now, Washington has only thrown its support behind self-declared President Juan Guaido, slapping sanctions on officials in Maduro's government as well. It's also urged other Western nations to back the removal of the democratically elected president from power. Well, the Secretary of the Russian Security Council now says that US troop movements to Colombia and Puerto Rico are precursors to a military invasion.
Other facts clearly indicate that the Pentagon is strengthening its troops in the region to oust legally elected President Maduro. The Venezuelan people understand this well, hence their reaction, their refusal to accept the goods from the aggressor country and support their president.
Well, the Security Council also added that the humanitarian crisis which Washington claims is plaguing Venezuela is a consequence of American sanctions and embargoes, and is being used as a tool to involve itself in Venezuelan domestic affairs.
And that's what this devil does. And, of course, they also like to use rock music. Abruptly caught another thing of the Battle of the Bands, concert, because the devil uses, media, especially music, as a form to change things, So Esau's coming at it with everything, because he knows that his time is short.
The warnings from Russia come shortly after President Maduro called out the US for preparing to wage a war over Venezuela's vast oil resources. Now, he believes Washington is stirring discontent in his country.
The United States wants Venezuela's oil, and they're willing to go to war for that oil. They're trying to fabricate a crisis to justify political escalation and a military intervention in Venezuela.
Well, his words come as members of the so-called Lima Group gathered in Colombia with opposition leader Juan Guaido and U.S. officials to discuss the Venezuelan crisis.
And that's another thing, doesn't this sound the same thing that you heard before about why they got to get rid of Bashar al-Assad, in Syria, and why they had to remove Muammar Gaddafi from power? Man, this devil doesn't even change his tactics.
Bloc of 14 predominantly Latin American countries, and it's sending an appeal to the International Criminal Court demanding that it consider the humanitarian situation in Venezuela. Breaking down that story for us, Philip Maupin.
Well, Mike Pence was speaking to the Lima Group in Bogota, Colombia, about the crisis in Venezuela. Now, when he addressed the grouping, he gave his full support on behalf of the United States to Juan Guaido, who proclaimed himself to be the interim president of Venezuela. Furthermore,
and keep in mind, all these councils and all that, Council of Foreign Relations, they're all members of the Illuminati secret societies, the Freemasons, the Skull and Bones societies. This is where the Edomites, the rulers of the world, meet to discuss regime change, all of that, And, that's just a little extra there.
he said that new sanctions against Venezuela were in the works. 4 individuals in the Venezuelan government have already been named by the U.S. Treasury. Mike Pence, who offered amnesty to any folks in the military of Venezuela who would switch sides and come over to Guaido's side. And he then offered additional funding to countries in the region that would go along with Washington in its efforts to remove Maduro.
Today also it's my privilege to announce that the United States will provide an additional $56 million to support our partners in the region as you come to the aid of the Venezuelan people, fleeing from the deprivation and oppression of the Maduro regime. It's good people.
You're the one that put the conditions there, just like Roger Waters said earlier. So here's more.
To a report by Reuters, on Monday, the United States targeted Venezuela's government with new sanctions, calling on allies to freeze the assets of its state-owned oil company,
just like PayPal.
VSA. following violence that prevented humanitarian aid from reaching the country over the weekend.
Didn't they do this to Iran?
Diplomats reportedly claim that the Trump
Even though Iran
administration
kept the
has taken
nuclear
its
deal?
pressure campaign to the United Nations Security Council, urging it to discuss the ongoing situation in Venezuela. Reuters reports that the U.S. Treasury Department's sanctions were imposed on 4 Venezuelan state governors allied with the Department of President Nicolas Maduro, blocking any assets they control in the United States.
But for a completely related story that is unbelievable, and if, like I said, you've been watching this show, you're not surprised at all. But to see him openly say this really shows you how omnipotent they think they are, that they can get away with doing this stuff while they're failing to overthrow another country that's so transparent, it makes my head spin. It's so right in front of it. But now, and I just talked about Bolton saying the same thing, and we were also just talking about Nikki Haley saying the same thing, Mike Pence saying the same thing over and over and over. Nicaragua, these countries need regime change. Well, now Bolton has openly said regime change is also planned. Not thinking about, but planned for Nicaragua and Cuba, not only Venezuela. So now we have him on record with a Telemundo interview saying that, yeah, we're going to be attacking Cuba and Nicaragua very soon. Big surprise. This is the troika of tyranny that Bolton came out with. This has clearly been an orchestrated thing from well before they even carried out this regime change effort in Venezuela. How can we not see how obvious this is? These countries that the 3 specific countries that Bolton had failed to accomplish in his past, that Abrams was completely involved in. And all of a sudden they just now decided that these 3 are the most dangerous in the world. Come on, people. How many times have we heard this? Oh, threat to our democracy, North Korea, fake news, all these different stories they want to throw at us that right now this is what you need to care about. And all of a sudden it switches from Russia or Syria to now all of a sudden Venezuela. That's the most important thing. Why? Because it's what they want you focused on now. They're trying to manufacture your consent. And guess what? Nicaragua and Cuba are right around the corner for the, 3rd, 4th time they've tried this in U.S. history. So U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo just openly admitted something that will not surprise you, as I said, if you've been watching this show or have simply just been paying attention. But he openly admitted that U.S. policy includes, quote, moving against regimes that are not democratic, as if they have some legal right to dictate what other people want to believe in their ideology. Can you believe he would even say that? Such as, specifically, Cuba, Nicaragua, but not simply Maduro's government of Venezuela, he said during an interview with Telemundo. But now we're not even concerned about the terrorists anymore. If you just don't believe what we believe, we're going to come and take you down. I guess, people are propagandized to think that socialism means inherently bad things, and I'm not a fan of socialism. I'm not a fan of any government. But the reality is they're straight up saying that if you don't agree with the way we see things, then we're going to take you down. But how does that fare for somebody like an authoritarian monarchy, such as Saudi Arabia? But see, they don't talk about this. It's only the countries that they want to apply it to. If you can try to pretend that Saudi Arabia is democratic, then you are just completely disconnected from reality. But they don't care to talk about Saudi Arabia because they're working with them to destroy the entire nation of Yemen. But that's not part of this discussion for them. He says, quote, if you're moving against these regimes that are not democratic, or excuse me, this is a question from the completely staged and lapdog media personnel that wanted to ask the right question, says, well, if you're moving against these regimes that are not democratic, many Nicaraguan people and Cuban people are asking themselves, are you going to help us next? Which is just so ridiculous. It'd be as if these people are really going, yay, U.S., come overthrow our country and leave us in ruin, as you've tried and done so in the past. People are very hip to what they're trying to do. They just don't see that on the mainstream media. And he answers, yes, President Trump's administration has done so and will continue to do so, not just in Venezuela, but certainly Nicaragua and Cuba as well. Well, that's good to know. That all the groups that continued to aggressively say over the last year that we don't want regime change anywhere are now seeking specifically overtly regime change in these 3 countries. For no other reason that they simply do not have the same ideology, the same political views as this administration. That's it. And making the claims that because of these views, their people are suffering. And it probably has something to do with it because governments make their people suffer. But it has largely to do with what the U.S. has done to these countries in the past. Just like all the experts will tell you if you actually care to listen to them instead of the mainstream pundits. Now, it goes on to say they're very different from the previous administration, their views. They recognize that these governments are treating their people privacy risks, they're treating, or excuse me, the quote says that they're treating their people harshly, presenting real risks, security risks to the people, privacy risks, denying them basic liberties. And those are not the kind of things that ought to happen in the Western Hemisphere. See, this is the important part lately, is they're avoiding saying in general, because Yemen is by and large the worst thing happening anywhere. So now they're just saying, well, you know, the Western Hemisphere, because that's what we really care about. Not so much all the other places our military bases are everywhere in the world, but just right here, which is just stupid. Like, distance-wise, it's not even that much more. It's just ridiculous for them to say that that's why. The point is they're trying to keep your mind away from what they're doing everywhere else. But he goes on to say, and the United States under President Trump is working diligently to not just Venezuela, but each of those two countries to achieve good outcomes for those people. Well, you're batting zero at this point. Every country you've ever done this to is in complete and utter ruin, but maybe this time you'll succeed. He goes on to say, these people need to lead these efforts. I'm convinced that they are determined to do it as well. The American people will support them. Now, just the staggering amount of inconsistencies and outright lies in this statement, it's nothing new. This is what they always do. They present their version of reality that's completely disconnected from what's actually happening. And they force it down your throat. And most of the things they pretend are so bad in these countries, you could point out worse examples of in the United States. But we're so propagandized away from even paying attention to that. So as the article puts it, so regime change is not only on the table, it's a sought-after objective, not only in Venezuela, but also in Nicaragua, Cuba, and possibly and likely others in the future. That's how this is being opened up. That anyone that's not, as they see it, a democracy, even though the U.S. stupidly itself is not a democracy, which is so easy to prove. But if you're not a democracy, if you don't do what we think is democracy, which is basically just bending the knee to whatever the U.S. oligarchy wants, then we're going to take you down. Now, Pompeo also spoke of the humanitarian aid, claiming that he hoped that the Maduro government would let the aid in and that he is listening. You know, that one small fraction of the aid that we're trying to force in for a specific reason. He's urging the Venezuelan military to allow the aid and not keep the population hungry. Of course, the same propaganda. Now, he also once more reiterated that every option is on the table, making sure that no one's forgotten yet, right? We're still open to invade this country if we have to. Let me reiterate that with every single moment I get in front of the press. There's also a reason for that. Now, he said this was in response to a question by the interviewer, alleging that Maduro may turn on his people, as if in such a case the U.S. is ready to defend the Venezuelan people from their own government if push comes to shove. Exactly. The same scenario, creating the justification to pretend that Maduro is attacking his people, you know, sounds very similar to Assad's gassing his own people, Assad's murdering his own people, which we now know is not true, at least in the context and the times they were pointing it out. And so they're using it now again to create this, to use the scenario to say that he's attacking his own people now, even though every single thing you can see is showing you the opposite. And using that if we have to, we'll ignore what the American people want, what the Venezuelan people want. We'll do what we have to, which is invade this country for their own good. Bomb them into freedom, basically. Pompeo stated the entire U.S. policy for regime change and fighting against these regimes that are not democratic is to cause a domino effect and show the citizens of the countries that, quote, the yoke of authoritarianism that has been foisted upon them is not necessary. How funny it is to see an authoritarian empire, this U.S. militarized effort come in as if you're not being authoritarian. It's ridiculous. And saying that we're trying to save you from a country that's been giving you free healthcare and free housing and free medical care. Oh, we're going to save you, just like we saved Libya and we saved Syria and we saved Yemen, we saved the Ukraine and we saved Somalia and on and on and on and on. Can't even remember them all off the top of my head. He went on to say that the corruption of those regimes is not necessary, that the bad behavior and difficult living conditions that these people find themselves in today is not necessary. I guess you could say the same thing for a lot of countries, including the United States, that they can have a different life and that they'll contribute their efforts, their goodwill, and their humanity towards achieving a better political situation, both in Venezuela and Nicaragua and Cuba as well. Clearly, because that's the three countries they're going after. Now, on November 1st, 2018, U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton also called Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela, as I said, the troika of tyranny. Announced new measures against the socialist countries, promising that they, quote, will feel the full weight of America's robust sanctions regime. That's great. So we're promising to sanction your country that's already struggling, and then we're going to use the fact that that pushes you further into economic disarray to point out that your country's a problem because of our actions. So stupidly obvious, it's right out there in front of everybody. The research is in that sanctions are designed to do this. They've admitted it themselves. And then they use the catastrophe it causes to pretend that the country needs U.S. liberation. Now, Bolton said under President Trump, quote, "We will no longer appease dictators and despots near our shores in this hemisphere." See, right? Clear. But we'll be okay. Saudi Arabia is fine because that's not our hemisphere, right? We just don't want them in our hemisphere. This is the new spin on their propaganda, because people like me are pointing out the absurd contradiction of pretending to care about people and fighting against authoritarianism while your chief ally in the Middle East, one of them, or both of them for that matter, are authoritarian. It's just patently stupid.
And this clip here, this is one of those take in the meat, spit out the bones kind of thing. Of course, Lisa Haven is a big-time supporter of Donald J. Trump, just like Chris Green and others are. They give you interesting information, but, you can't take in everything. But this, however, is a video on Nicaragua, the mark of the beast. And, in fact, the fact that she's even talking about it, says something here, because, man, a lot of these other alphabet camps won't even talk about it. And here she's coming with a Christian perspective on the mark of the beast. And, that's another thing. She also happens to run the Before It's News media as well. So she has more than just YouTube platform. But she sometimes comes out with interesting information, just like Paul Begley does. Again, taking the meat, spit out the bones. Same thing, like the previous video of Last American Vagabond. Just taking the meat, spit out the bones kind of thing. But the fact is, though, is that this being the year Nicaragua, and these wars and rumors of wars are happening on a much larger scale, which means that we're almost in the time of the end. I'm just going to let this video play and then get into some more here.
Hi everyone, Lisa Haven here with my favorite producer, David Hefner, and I brought him on to talk about a few things, give you guys an update on, the TV series, The Last Evangelist, as well as talk about a secret that is being kept with Amazon. Some very devious stuff is happening, so where do you want to start?
Okay, well, first of all, Lisa, you are going to be in Last Evangelist.
Yes.
Now, folks, she's playing Amy Adams. Who is Amy Adams? Amy Adams is kind of like the Surgeon General for the end times, who has everyone put in the chip. Once you've accepted the chip, the mark of the beast, she's the gal that the government, the one world government, has appointed to come in and kind of represent. You're the poster gal, right? Oh,
yay!
It'll be okay. Go
bad
ahead.
Girl for a little while.
Right,
bad
right.
character.
Take that
good.
vaccine. Take that flu shot. Take that chip. So that's your character. And why are we going to talk about what we're going to talk about, which is very serious, Lisa? Is this is happening now? It's real, because what I wrote about in The Last Evangelist last year, which we're getting ready to film, is actually happening now.
Absolutely.
Why do I say that? For you to operate your character, you have to have a system behind you, a mechanism, okay? Let's talk about Amazon, okay? Amazon, they acquired a large pharmaceutical company. A lot of people don't know this. I think it's called the Pill Pack. Now, why is this important? Because the chip is part of the pharmaceuticals. People don't understand that. It's not a technology, it is, but it has to be implemented in your body, right? Which is medical, which ties into pharmaceutical. Okay, and what's one of the other major things that's happened lately? They have acquired a company called EERD, and they have the mesh. Now, the mesh is one of the strongest forms of internet, and I can't get into it, but you walk into your home, and the mesh is there.
So it's just like connected to everything. We're talking your refrigerator, your anything that's got smart by it, TV, all of that.
Right, your chip. Your chip. Hey, honey, I'm just getting home. Oh, yeah, don't forget to keep your chip activated over there for the newest update, right? Oh, yeah, thank you. Flip switch. There it is, zip, right? It's right there in your home. It's unbelievable. So why are we talking about this? Lisa, we as Christians, we talk about the mark of the beast. You're not going to be able to buy or sell, right? And this is real.
Yes.
Right? It's real. You talk about this. I talk about this. Folks, wake up. We as the elect, waking up the elect, We got to scream louder. Because when things like this happen, we can't just sit back and go, oh, yeah, it's another. Lisa, they're going to start implementing this chip, I believe, in the next 12 to 18 months. And they're already doing it in other countries.
Well, they've got versions. I will say this, speaking of the elect, God says in the Bible that even the elect will be deceived come the latter days. But they already are implementing forms of the chip. There was actually a bill where a legislator or a congressman, one of the two, was attempting to stop the passing of microchipping, asking the question, should we try to stop microchipping before it becomes too late, before it even comes on the market? So they were attempting to stop something from happening. Do we do it now, or do we do it when it's already on the market? So there was something that was working against it, but that aside, there is so much stuff already happening. Now, Wisconsin, there was a company in Wisconsin that started microchipping employees. It's absolutely optional, but they were doing it. Right. Internationally, in Sweden, thousands of people have been microchipped in Sweden. We already have the ability for our dogs. They're getting microchipped, if you want to call it a version. Right. And then here in the States, we have to also think about, people are already open and willing to do that. Now, the Bible does say one day it will be forced. We just don't have a time frame on that.
Absolutely. And the kids, you have kids, I have kids. They would love to chip our kids. Why? Because we can track them in case they get lost. Oh, yeah, we can track them, and so can they.
That was in the Obamacare, by the way, versions and mentions of it.
Exactly.
Medical.
Exactly. And here's the thing. I was in a restaurant the other day, and I was talking to a gal, and we happened to talk about End Times, the Mark of the Beast, the chip. And she loves tattoos. And you know what she said to me? Because I was joking with her. I said, what if it came in the form of a tattoo? She said, I would take it in a heartbeat. Lisa, they're going to come after the youth, and they're going to present these youth-driven, this culture-driven type agenda. And they'll say, hey, go ahead and take it. It's, what I'm saying, the tattoo thing, you press a button, it's very quick.
It's convenient.
It's convenience. They're going to hit our youth. So don't think, folks, that just because your young person is a Christian, they're going to be exempt of this, because the enemy, Satan, will bring it in through the culture, through the system of the culture, and present it on a silver platter. And they're going to go, oh, wow, that's cool. I'll take it.
That's true. We already have kids that are glued, if you will, to their phones. Now, going back to Amazon, what role do you think, they play in that?
Yeah, good question. So Amazon, they are the supermarket. They're the highway, okay, to implement everything we talked about. You can't have a Mark of the Beast, a chip, without having a system for it to go through, okay? Why? We talked about it. They have the big pharmaceuticals that they've just acquired. They've acquired Whole Foods, so now they're into the vitamins and the foods, right? They've acquired the mesh, so now they're going to be in all the homes. So you need that in order for it to happen. Lisa, it's called a system. I believe part of the Mark of the Beast, and I don't want to get into this too deep because this would be a big show, a long show, is it's going to be part of the system.
So whatever form the Mark of the Beast, when it comes, it's going to have to hack onto some kind of system, be it Amazon or be it something else.
I don't think it's going to be called Amazon.
No.
I think, again, we talked about the one world religious system in Last Evangelist, which I think is going to happen, marries the one world government system. It forms a very, very strong system. They're going to take over the system that Amazon is creating now. Think of Amazon as a bunch of construction workers building a highway, okay? One day, someone's going to come along and take over that highway or build the same highway right next to it and implement that system. And this is what people need to be very, very careful of. It's happening now.
Absolutely. There's lots of markers. Every day we see technological booms and technological advancements coming our way. And like you said, Amazon's this growing monster behind the scenes, and we have censorship now on the internet. I know YouTube is about to do another wave of removals come March.
And that's why I have you on davidheavener.tv and I have me on davidheavener.tv, and that's where we need to be, folks. Go to davidheavener.tv because YouTube's going to flip the switch and we're going to be gone, right?
Yeah, they could definitely do that. They've already started multiple platforms. I did a report the other day. They're removing political people from outlets such as Uber. I mean, Uber has not. And if you're going to ban someone from a PayPal or an Uber or an Uber Eats, Uber Lyft, be it a criminal or something that's going to hurt your Uber driver, but they're not. It's a political voice, and it's gone to a level of absurdity. So we've become, quote unquote, enemy number one, worse than a murderer and a rapist. And so we're getting banned from everyday items. It's just insane. Which is again why I've partnered with people like you at your, going on Roku and doing this television TV series with you. But if people want to donate or want to help out, how do they do that?
Thank you. Yeah, it's through a nonprofit, lastevangelist.com. God said, do not go to the system of investors. Go to my people. They'll hear my voice. They'll donate. You get a hat. You get a T-shirt. You get a walk-on part. You get to hang out with me and Lisa on the set. And folks, listen. This series is not just entertainment. It's entertainment last. It's truth first. It's how we see things, and we want the body of Christ and just people to understand what's really going on. And that's what these episodes are about. And that's why I'm so excited. Lisa's all through every episode because she's the gal that has to keep the chip in the people, because they get very disoriented, So
meanwhile, I'll be preaching against it, right?
Yeah, right. Lastevangelist.com. Go there and sign the newsletter and donate if God leads you to.
Perfect. And sign up for the, subscribe to the newsletter so you get the most current updates. Well, thanks again for coming on the broadcast. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa. Good to be with you as always.
You too. And thanks again for you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And just a real quick, give a shout out to my partner at preparewithlisa.com. If you guys don't have food storage, you never know when the end times are going to arrive or anything for that matter, right?
Absolutely. We may have to put it in Last Evangelist. We may need all that food.
I know. There you go.
Because the world may be blowing up as we're shooting the episodes.
Oh, that'd be crazy. But make sure you check it out at preparewithlisa.com. All the information is below. Well, thanks again for tuning in. I'm Lisa Haven, and that was David Heavener.
David Heavener. God bless.
Signing out.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Continuing on, knowing this is the year Charagma, I'm just going to, come in from here, Revelation chapter 13 and verse 12. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, talking about the Roman Empire, and causeth the earth and them that dwell within to worship the first beast. That means to worship Rome, the government, to worship them, their leaders. That's why their faces are on the dollar bill, to worship them, because it even says it on there. In God we trust. Well, their God is money. So that's why you see the faces of the Edomites, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doth great wonders, so they make a fire come down from heaven. That is, talking about his air force's military might, on the earth in the sight of men. And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had to do in the sight of the beast. Meaning, all this enormous power, the power to bring down governments, the power, to cause regime changes. Saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image of the beast that had the wound by the sword and did live. Thus, you need to surrender to the New World Order, to the Illuminati, pretty much. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause all that would not worship the image should be killed. And that's pretty much those who would not surrender, people like Bashar al-Assad, or, that come against, that they should be killed. And that's why they're invading Venezuela and Cuba, Nicaragua, and, pretty much that's who this is talking about. And it causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand or in their forehead. It's on the front page of everything now, talking about that RFID implant, that no man might buy so his trade, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So pretty much, you take that Charagma, you take that incision, that RFID chip, you're fucked. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666, and that's pretty much talking about, this whole system. Once you take that mark, you're fucked. Since we know that Persia is in end times as well, here's something else that I thought was interesting. Of course, this is most likely just propaganda of Amalek. Put the scare out there about Iran, but found this video very interesting. Cyber attack. Iran comes perilously close to infiltrating Amalek missile system.
Iran comes perilously close to infiltrating Israel missile system. Iranian hackers almost penetrated Israel's missile warning system in an attack that made Israel's military scramble to protect its cyber defense systems. The head of cyber defense at the time, Brigadier General Noam Sher, admitted that the Israel defense system came incredibly close to being infiltrated 2 years ago. Israel detected the hackers in 2017 and blocked the attempted attack. Following the hacking attempt, Mr. Sher warned of the Islamic Republic's growing threat from cyber attacks. Mr. Sher said, "We can't wait until Iran becomes a major threat. We dealt with them and built another barrier and another monitoring system to make sure we could stop them if they tried again." Despite leaving his post at the time, he also insisted that Iran's cyber offensives offer the most disturbing trend in cyberspace while urging for more sanctions to be placed on the country. Furthermore, last January, U.S.-based cybersecurity firm FireEye Incorporated reported that Iran could be behind the wave of attacks across the whole of the Middle East, Europe, and North America. While Iran has not refuted these claims, it has also accused Israel of multiple cyber assaults. The Islamic Republic identified an attack as recently as November last year. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, however, recently spoke of how Israel is constantly fighting off cyber attacks from Iran. He said, "Iran attacks Israel on a daily basis. We monitor those attacks. We see these attacks and we..."
So you can tell this is just propaganda because they want a war with Persia and they will not stop until they get the war. The least of their flock drawing them out.
We foil these attacks all the time. Tensions between the countries have soared following an exchange of missile strikes in January. The Israel Defense Force reported that elite Iranian forces had launched missile strikes towards the Golan Heights. In retaliation, the IDF targeted Iranian forces in Syria and in a change of tact, took full responsibility for the attacks.
They really weren't targeting Iran. They were really targeting of course, Syria, because it's always been about control over the oil, for the same reasons that they're invading Venezuela. And I think I'll end it on this one. This is about Rex 84, you know, what's happening over here. As you know that we're getting closer and closer to the end, and so they have to do this. So the devil comes down having great wrath because he knows that his time is short. And Rex 84 is one of the big things. That's why you're seeing more of the practice drills and more military movement, because they're about to make this move. We all know that this being the year Karagma, that martial law is part of what's going to bring that about. So for all that, I want to say Barak Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rukakadosh, Barakatum, and hope that this has been edifying. Now I'll just let this audio play here.
Our analysis on intel we have received, as well as events and drops over the last few days. Please take note of these following dates, both past and future. Reset. The government shutdown on December 21st resulted from the US incorporated bankruptcy and the need to transition to the new asset-backed system. POTUS would stay at the White House during the shutdown, which would last until the financial transition was complete. On January 10th, HSBC was made liquid and given the green light for ZIM redemption. Since then, Tier 3 and Tier 4 Group A have been paid out. Now Tier 4 Group B could begin redeeming, meaning ZIM holders could be notified of appointments at any time, and likely would be this weekend, as apparently POTUS has made the decision to begin exchanges without declaring a national emergency. Notification would come by emergency text, or a seat of 800 numbers. ZIM holders would redeem with HSBC personnel at military facilities that would be open 24/7. In the first round, certain people would be notified by emergency text message via 800s and given info on how to proceed. In the second round, those who purchased ZIM online would be notified by emergency text message, or via 800 numbers. If you didn't have ZIM, you could exchange your currency at a bank around the same time that the general public began on January 22, 2019. For safety's sake, ZIM holders would be accompanied to and from their appointment. ZIM holders could redeem their ZIM and could exchange other currencies at their appointment. If you gifted ZIM, you would need to give out the cell or email information of those you gifted to so that they could be contacted. ZIM holders could receive from HSBC, ongoing family office, private banking and wealth management services. Currency rates were high and contract rates were available if you asked for them by a certain time, the date of which was unknown at this time. The value of your ZIM was what you justified it to be, dependent on your humanitarian business plan. The global currency reset would be announced at the Economic Conference in Davos, Switzerland on January the 22nd to the 25th. Perceived timeline. October 1, 2018, the fiat US dollar had no more liquidity in a bankrupt US incorporated. December 21, 2018, a shutdown of the US government was due to bankruptcy of US incorporated, so a transition to a gold, asset-backed dollar could occur. January 2nd, military tribunals began according to Q. January 9th, final preparations for the RV were completed. January 10th, with most countries in bankruptcy, a debt reset process began and HSBC was made liquid in preparation for ZIM exchanges. January 11th, 15, a national emergency declaration, martial law, was expected due to the economic crisis of a pending stock market crash that began October 1, 2018, continuing downhill ever since. Public insecurity due to US border invasion of terrorists, criminals and kidnappers, plus arrests on over 71,000 indictments that named political and global elites. Operation Gladio was a nationwide secret army of foreign mercenaries, criminals, terrorists and other soldiers of fortune who used the open borders to sneak across terrorist cells who would carry out false flag attacks. Another reason for POTUS to immediately declare martial law. January 15th at midnight, RV private redemption to either begin or complete. January 16th, terrorist Alfonso Ulloa was organizing 15,000 plus Hondurans and thousands of Mexicans who planned to force their way into the US illegally around January 16th, another reason for POTUS to immediately declare martial law. January 18, 2019 5:15 military time, and possible attack would start according to a decode of a 2007 Simpson film. January 22, 25, public announcement of the global currency reset and perhaps Jizara law, and the general public would begin exchanging. Please take note. 1. Trump was selected, not elected, to invoke Jizara law. 2. Tribunals began first week in January 2019. 3. Heading the tribunals were Generals Rogers, Sessions, Mattis, and Kelly. January 11, 2019, POTUS edges closer to announcing national emergency. January 11, 2019 4:05 AM EST Intel Alert. 1. All efforts to reopen the government were being blocked and the government shutdown would continue indefinitely until the transition was completed. POTUS would be staying throughout the whole duration of the government shutdown, as his presence would be required once the transition began. 2. On January 22, 25, the World Bank IMF would be announcing the financial reset at Davos along with the rest of the world. 3. The UST might also be present at Davos during the announcement. News of the renminbi rivaling the dollar was surfacing. Gold would dominate this year, which would set the tone for all currencies to become gold-backed. 4. The global rollout for the transition was geopolitically occurring worldwide in real time. 5. Zimbabwe's mineral reserves were unfathomably immense and would be collaterally backing the financial reset and new quantum financial reset, QFS. Zimbabwe's immense mineral reserves was the reason why they were crippled with sanctions by the cabal-influenced West. 6. You would be able to negotiate any rate you wished for your historic bonds, ZIM, at your currency redemption appointment. Approval of your chosen rate also depended on your humanitarian project. 7. Depending on the rate you choose, the staff at your currency redemption appointment will determine whether that rate could be collaterally backed or not. 8. According to our sources, the currency redemption event, RV, was expected to begin any time before the Davos Forum January 22, 25. January 10, 2019, 11:13 p.m. Eastern Time, QAnon, Golden Globes. Watch the water, we have the server. As we, the anonymous charity, sift through data and intel recently made available to us, we will let you know more, as soon as we can. This will either be via a live stream, unannounced, or via a scheduled live stream premiere. Please activate the YouTube bell function for notifications on when this occurs. Important information we need to share with you. When and if a state of emergency is nationally declared, martial law will be unofficially enforced, whether that be due to an EMP, more man-made natural disasters, potential pandemic, a nationwide grid shutdown, nationwide banking glitch, virus, or any combination thereof. When this is the case, the government's forced solution to their controlled, caused demolitions and problems, will be to round up political dissidents or who they deem domestic terrorists into detention camps, also known as FEMA camps, for the sake of national security. These FEMA camps are located nationwide, with well over 800 of them functioned, fully furnished, and highly secured. The Rex 84 program, Operation Cable Splicer, and Operation Garden Plot. Have you heard of these before? The Rex 84 program was initially established as a way to deal with a mass exodus of illegal aliens crossing the Mexican-US border. They would be quickly rounded up and detained in detention centers by FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. Rex 84 allowed many military bases to be closed down and to be turned into prisons. Just now in January of 2019 a Soros-funded plot was foiled, to bring in terrorist Alfonso Ulloa and 15,000 plus Hondurans and thousands of Mexicans to force their way into the US illegally on the 16th. Another reason for POTUS to immediately declare martial law. Operation Cable Splicer and Garden Plot are the two sub-programs which can be implemented once the Rex 84 program is initiated for its proper purpose. Operation Garden Plot is the program to control the population. Cable Splicer is the program for an orderly takeover of the state and local governments by the federal government. FEMA is the executive arm of the coming police state and thus will head up all operations. The presidential executive orders signed by Hussein and already listed on the Federal Register also are part of the legal framework for this operation. The camps all have railroad facilities as well as roads leading to and from the detention facilities. Many also have an airport nearby. The majority of the camps can house a population of 20,000 prisoners. Currently, the largest of these facilities is just outside of Fairbanks, Alaska. The Alaskan facility is a massive mental health facility and can hold approximately 2 million people. These camps are also being built under disguises, and are planned to be functioned in areas such as abandoned malls, warehouses, shopping centers, and government-run entities such as schools, libraries, post offices, and even military bases. However, locations will also include places such as Walmart. There is even evidence showing the building and funding of underground tunnels, which will connect these Walmarts and stores alike to underground military bases and FEMA camps, in preparation for mass evacuation come martial law. Chances are, when martial law is declared and emergencies do occur, Walmart may be one of the only stores available for your shopping needs. Where are the camps? In the description of this video transmission below, as well as the pinned comment by QAnon, we have the full list, arranged in alphabetical order by state. Please take a moment to copy these down for future reference. There are many other locations not listed below that are worthy of consideration as a possible detention camp site, but due to space limitations and the time needed to verify, we, the anonymous charity, could not include them here, yet. Virtually all military reservations, outposts, bases, stations, and depots can be considered highly suspect, because it is federal land. Also fitting this category are regional airports and international airports, which also fall under federal jurisdiction and have limited access areas. Mental hospitals, closed hospitals and nursing homes, closed military bases, wildlife refuges, state prisons, toxic waste dumps, hotels and other areas all have varying degrees of potential for being a detention camp area. The likelihood of a site being suspect increases with transportation access to the site, including airports, airstrips, railheads, navigable waterways and ports, interstate and U.S. highways. Some facilities are disguised as industrial or commercial properties, camouflaged or even wholly contained inside large buildings, Indianapolis, or factories. Many inner-city buildings left vacant during the deindustrialization of America have been quietly acquired and held, sometimes retrofitted for their new uses. Our next video message to you will be at 17:45 Pacific Time on January 13, 2019, later today, and we will cover this some more. Thank you. Be vigilant, and as always, where we go one, we go all. End of transmission.